Hi, I'm Stephanie Eddy. I'm the baking columnist for the Globe and Mail and the author of the blog Clockwork Lemon, and today we're going to be making biscuits. One of the best parts of baking nowadays is that there's so many gadgets which make baking easier. I know a lot of you have mixers, and I love mine, and they make baking a snap. Crap. But we don't necessarily need a mixer. Lots of times when you're baking, you can make do with less, so we'll just adjust and use a bowl. So now we're going to get started making the biscuits, and we're going to start by adding 2 cups of flour. And when you're measuring out flour, there's an easy way to just kind of fluff it up like this. You don't have to sift. Just doing this adds a bit of extra air, which makes sure that your baked goods aren't dry or dense. We add a bit of sugar. It kind of makes sure that they don't taste bland. It is optional, but I think it tastes better with just a little bit. And then there's 2 teaspoons of baking powder and 2/3 of a teaspoon of salt. The reason that you always put salt in baking, especially when it's something really basic that just has flour and water, is you need it for the flavor. Biscuits made without salt, they taste very, very, very bland. And nobody likes gross biscuits. So it's just flour, sugar, baking powder, and salt. And then we whisk these ingredients together. Actually, that's too many dishes. We just stir them together. There isn't too much of a difference whisking dry ingredients and spooning them as long as you really mix it in. And then it's one less dish for you to do. So everybody wins. Today we're gonna be adding some herbs. I picked up some sage, some chives, and just some flat leaf parsley. And all you have to do is just chop them up and throw them into the dough. Or tear it up and throw it in, because it's easier that way. When you're picking a flavor combination, you can just smell the different herbs or see what you think would taste good, and it's approximately a 1/4 cup. So now that we have the dry ingredients mixed, we're going to stir in 1.5 cups of heavy cream. Lots of recipes ask you to cut in butter and then they add some sort of liquid. But if you use heavy cream, you don't need to, because it adds enough fat into it to enrich the dough and give you those flaky layers and that nice rise, and it kind of cuts out that step, so it's really great. So all you need is a spoon. No! You need a spoon, and you're gonna pour in almost all, but not quite all of the cream. You wanna leave just a little bit in your measuring cup, and you just kind of fold the cream into the dough, just like that, because you don't wanna go crazy with the stirring, because that develops too much gluten, and that will make things tough. So once you've been stirring, just keep folding, you'll have kind of a sticky dough on top and some dry flour at the bottom. And what you want to do is turn the dough out onto the counter and add that remaining cream to the dry stuff left in your bowl. So it's just kind of a way to mix in the cream gradually without over mixing the dough, trying to work it all in at once. So instead of stirring, it's better to kind of fold and knead the dough, which helps create layers. So you have to not mind having dirty hands for this, because it is a bit sticky. So what you're doing is you're just patting the dough out into a square, and then you take your hands and just kind of fold it onto itself. And then turn it, pat it, fold again. And you can kind of flip it over if you want, if it's getting too wet on the top. There should be about 8 folds, and just turn it each time before you fold it. And if it's really sticky, if it's sticking a lot to the counter, you can always sprinkle just a little bit of flour on top, but try not to add too much, because that's gonna make it dry. So once all your folding's done, the dough is all ready for you to roll out. It's the very last step, and all you're gonna need is your rolling pin. But if you don't have a rolling pin, it's not like you can just roll it out with your elbows. But what you probably do have is an empty wine bottle. I know I do. And just roll it out. These are rustic, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Just a bit thinner into a rectangle. You want the dough to be approximately 1 inch thick. You can kind of just push it back. You don't need to be picky. Then the dough gets split down the middle. When you're dividing dough, it's best to try and make it as even as possible, and the best way to do it is to always cut things in half. So cut the rectangle down the middle, then cut it in half, and then cut each half in half. Because if you start at the beginning, you'll find that by the time you cut down, your last biscuits will be usually not the same size as the rest of them. These are great because you don't need to grease the pan, they don't need parchment paper, they just go right on the pan and right into the oven at 425. And these biscuits come together really quickly and they bake quickly because you can just whip these up really fast without a mixer or a whisk or a knife. So now we're gonna bake these at 425 for 12 to 16 minutes. And you just wanna bake them until they're light brown on the top and golden brown on the bottom. And now we wait. So now that we've tied it up a bit and the biscuits are done, it's time to bask in the glorious rewards of homemade biscuits. You want to take the biscuits off the tray using your fingers if you're brave and a spatula if you're smart, and just let them cool for approximately 10-15 minutes, which gives you time to put together a salad or finish up a soup, and then they're ready to go with your dinner. I'm Stephanie Eddy, and that's how you can make delicious biscuits in a snap.